All this is really about is energy in motion. And so what we're doing is we need a place to put the energy. And I either keep it down in the body, which is why our bodies are holding so much stuff, or we dump it. This is a path that gives me another alternative, because I didn't know what else to do with it. That's not bad. It's just it's the only options I had. So along comes welcoming and is giving me another opportunity to go through it. So what begins to happen is, on a conscious level, our programming goes off. Now we're taught that Jesus Christ, every experience we have as a human being that he experienced, that he was fully human in that reality. And that's where, if you look at the temptations in the desert, you'll see how, as far as that security and affection and control. So you go out to the desert and you don't eat for 40 days. See, my primary symbol for security, because that's how the false self looks. It looks for symbols to represent that to you. My primary for security was food. Like if I was happy, food. If I was sad, food. If I didn't know, food. But everything was about food. So go out there, don't eat for 40 days. And what's the first temptation?
To eat. Have something.
To turn the rock into bread. Now, what's Jesus' response to that? Meaning, not that we don't need physical food, but there is not enough symbols of security, Mary, in the world that will take away your need for security. It is only found in God. True security is only found in God. You know, the stock market just had a blip, so if you were looking at your portfolio, oh my God. You know that there is not enough, whatever the symbols in our cultural conditioning, because in different cultures and different people will have different images about what it should look like. But the teaching is, it is not out there. There is not enough out there that'll ever take care of that need. Okay, so finally, if you want a little affection, approval, or esteem, go up to the top of the temple or to the top of the church, the highest point you can find in the villages, jump off and let the angels catch you on your way down. Do it at high noon so everybody sees that you are a child of God. That was the second temptation, basically, you know. And what did Jesus say to that temptation? I am loved. I don't need to prove to you. He claimed the love of God. He claimed the affection and the approval in his very being. You are a child of God, and your reason for being is the fact that you are being. So nobody else can love you like God. Henry Nouwen put it this way: human beings are built with a need for first-tier love. The trouble is, human beings are second-tier lovers. So if you're seeking from this plane of existence that hole to be filled that needs first-tier love, it'll constantly be frustrated. Don't you know people? No matter how many partners, children, grandchildren, it's never enough. Because it's not meant to be enough. What happens is, if you connect with your source, you become a better second-tier lover and you expect less coming back to you. You know when somebody has looked at you and expected you to be the answer? And you know that you're going to disappoint, because no matter how hard you even want to be the answer, you're not. Because human beings weren't ever meant to be the answer. So connect with the source and allow yourself to enjoy all the second-tier love you can handle. Finally, if you want a little power or control, bow down before me and I'll give you the whole villages, all of it. You know, your own kingdom or queendom or whatever you want, it's yours. What did Jesus say to that? Doesn't exist. It's God that is the true source of power and control in my life. But it's God's control, not mine. It's the mystery of powerlessness. But there is no sense of, and I don't want to get into politics, but if you really want to look at the beauty of it, we have some of our politicians that are like this. If I can own all of this, it's me. It isn't any of us. Because it's not outside power and control we're talking about. It's that sense of being fully alive in your own body. Like the teachings in all the traditions, there is nothing so strong as weakness. That's what Paul kept saying. That's the mystery of it. And there is nothing as weak as false strength. There is nothing as gentle as true power, because it's contained. So in this practice, we are invited to look at ourselves. Martha, Martha, put your name there. You're worried and distracted about many things. But one thing is important. So that's what we're coming back to. In this process, we just start to see that's what begins to change. In some of the things I shared last night, for those of you that remember, the Lenten practice of take and accept yourself exactly as you are, where you are, comes from the perspective of all that's happening is God is letting you see this. But you don't have to be terrified of it because it's God's work in you. So we're not adding that extra layer of fighting it or that energy to fix it as much as to surrender to it and surrender it over. Let go. Mary used to teach, this practice always says, and you'll see the wording is let go. She said, because we as Americans can't stand the word surrender. It really is surrender, but we don't like that. That just gets our back up, you know, surrender. No, I'm not a loser. And in 12-step circles, I loved this. One of the guys said, I had to really work with that because he had a very difficult time when everything was powerlessness or surrender. And he said, I finally realized that when you surrender, you join the winning side. So that's how he joins the winning side. He won't say he surrendered. He joined the winning side. So this is the dance that welcoming is at the service of. And I just want to tell you one little story, and then we'll have a break. But first, I'll start with a passage from Thomas's little daybook, but I love this one. Surrender to the unknown marks the great transitions on the spiritual journey. On the brink of each new breakthrough, there is a crisis of trust and love. So I might joke about it a lot, but this is very courageous work. And that's why last night we talked about going through all the stages, that it finally rests in trusting enough. Because it's terrifying. What you're letting go of is that piece of yourself that you've told yourself you were and had to be to keep the world running forever. So what we're asked to really let go of is who we thought we were. Thank God that's really not the truth of you. but to be willing to walk into the arms of love and discover who we are. I loved Gus's reading this morning. That was quite beautiful, that we're really just going where we've always been. And that's what it's kind of a waking up to. Thomas says some of the best practice for dying is centering prayer, because you're asked to let go of everything. So you get practice in letting go, inch by inch, to really prepare us for the final. But if we believe the truth, we're not going anywhere but back to the source from which we emanate from the beginning. So this little body that we've been asked to kind of be with during this time, that's going to be the invitation to get a little closer to it. So, a story of how this kind of played out a little bit in some of my life. I'm the youngest of 5. That's what they started with. But the truth is, I'm a surprise after 4. And they are all much older than I am, as I tell them. So the oldest was 18, the youngest was 8, and I came along. And my parents always laughed, and the birth story was how much, if you knew me, I'm a good sleeper. What it really means is, 1, I am a good sleeper usually, but 2, I need a lot of sleep. But I was a bit premature. And my mother always told the story that I slept through my first feeding. And the doctor said, don't be concerned, because she needs sleep more than she needs food. Now, if you knew me, 2 things that are really up there are food and sleep. So that the doctor picked one over the other is a questionable fact. So, long story short, as life evolved, food was always my comfort, but my nemesis. It's always been my primary dance. And when I was a little girl and everybody else would be thinking about their weddings or that whole thing, I would always be stuck with, could I eat the wedding cake or not? I mean, literally, that was the big thing, like, or would I not, or just, anyway. So I always thought you'd grow out of it, because hopefully kids do grow out of their things, but my pieces just kept intertwining through my personality. So the right school. Okay, well, I did. I went to a great university, and I had a wonderful education, and I kept thinking I would grow out of it, like grow out of myself. But when I got to college in the late 70s, it was just a hotbed of eating disorders and everything else. So I just found a whole peer group that totally understood my craziness. So then it would be, well, when you got the right job. So, I got the job and I got the boyfriend and everything, it would be like, well, it'll be okay when. So I went through all of that, but after about 6 months, wherever I was, the food would come back into it, out of control food. So I was finding out that all my answers weren't working. So the best thing you can do then is pray, right? Okay, so then I really got into centering prayer. I was into this, and I was into my late 20s. And my dear friend, Sister Rita, at the House of Prayer in Erie, I had been through the Ignatian exercises and done all of that, and we were really into centering prayer. We had a centering prayer group. And she goes out to Colorado to Thomas Keating to the 10-day intensive and comes back and says, Mary, this is the retreat for you. And she got shingles, and she said it was part of the unloading. Well, she was a 60-year-old nun, and I was like a 29-year-old woman, and I said, if you got shingles, I'd die. I'm not going. That was literally how I was, So a dear friend of mine in the prayer group, because she every time would say, this is the retreat for you, honey. Because I loved the prayer, and we were watching the videos. I was totally engaged in the teaching, but I was scared to death. So a friend of mine, he was about my age, a little older, but he was an ophthalmologist. He signed up to go on retreat, so I signed up to go on retreat 2 months after him. Because he was my canary in the well. If he went and did not die, I would go. And literally, that was very much how I looked at it, just. Now, he did have a huge breakthrough and was in therapy for years, but I did not know that. Thank God I did not know that. So I go on retreat, finally, and it was just totally life-changing.